Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The bulkhead was buckling. Ezra Vance pressed his shoulder against the metal, feeling it shudder with each impact from the other side. The welding torch in his left hand spat blue flame. His right held a rail pistol, barrel still hot. 3 meters down the corridor, 2 VERATH corpses leaked black fluid onto the deck plates. A third was still twitching, compound eyes dimming. The comms unit in his ear crackled. "Captain, bridge. We've lost Deck 7 entirely. Boarders on decks 4, 5, and 6. Shields at 12% and falling." Halyard's voice. Calm. Professional. The voice of a man reading his own death sentence and filing it alphabetically. "Engines?" Vance asked. He didn't stop welding. 40% thrust. Bruz says he needs time. He'll get it. Another impact. The bulkhead groaned. Vance finished the weld, stepped back, and put 2 rounds through the metal at chest height. Something on the other side screeched and fell. "Plot an intercept course for the nearest VERATH destroyer," Vance said. "Close to knife range." A pause. "Sir, we have no shields." "I know what we have." He turned and moved down the corridor, stepping over the dead. Behind him, the bulkhead held. It would buy minutes. Minutes were currency now, and he intended to spend them well. Warborn. Prime Satik moved through the human ship with his clutch brothers flowing around him like water. The corridors were narrow, forcing them to advance in columns rather than the spreading swarm they preferred. Human architecture. Crude, inefficient. But effective, he was beginning to realize. They had breached the hull in 4 locations. Standard doctrine. Overwhelm, fragment, annihilate. The humans should have broken by now. They always broke. Every species did when the Warborn came through the walls. These humans had not broken. Ahead, his forward scouts reported contact. Satik clicked his mandibles twice. Advance and engage. He followed, 4 legs carrying him in a low, fast glide. The corridor opened into a junction. His scouts had stopped. 3 of them were dead. The humans had built a barricade from deck plates, cargo containers, and what looked like pieces of their own ship's internal systems. Behind it, Sethik could see movement, the muzzles of weapons, the cold light of human eyes, no fear scent. No panic pheromones. Just silence. And waiting? "Push forward," Sethik ordered. "They cannot hold." His Warborn surged. The humans opened fire. Gunnery Sergeant Maro Kasser had learned something in his years of service. The universe didn't care about fair fights. You took every advantage. You made every bullet count. And when you ran out of bullets, you made them count too. The VERATH came in a wave. Fast, coordinated, utterly silent, except for the clicking of their limbs on metal. Kasser's Marines fired in controlled bursts. No spray and pray. No wasted rounds. "Short bursts," Kasser called out. "Let them stack up." The first rank of VERATH fell. The second rank climbed over them. The third rank pushed the bodies forward as mobile cover. Smart. Too smart. "Grenades," Kasser ordered. 2 Marines pulled pins and threw. The explosions tore through the corridor, sending VERATH bodies tumbling. But more kept coming. Always more. A Marine to Kasser's left went down, a VERATH blade through his throat. Kasser shot the VERATH twice and kept firing. No time to mourn. No time to think. "Fall back to the second barricade," he said. "Controlled retreat. Keep spacing." They moved. Professional. Trained. Dying one by one, but never breaking. Behind them, the ship shuddered. Something had hit them hard. Or they had hit something. Kasser couldn't tell anymore. He just kept shooting. The reactor room was a cathedral of failing systems. Warning lights painted everything in red and amber. Alarms had been silenced minutes ago because they were no longer useful. Everything was alarming. Tomek Braz moved through the chaos like a priest performing last rites. His hands never stopped, rerouting power, bypassing burned-out relays, coaxing life from systems that should have been dead. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, you stubborn bastard." The main engine coupling was fused, plasma scoring from the initial attack. He'd need to cut it free and splice in a backup. That would take time. Time they didn't have. The hatch behind him opened. Braz didn't turn. He knew those footsteps. "How long?" Vance asked. "Longer than we have." That's not an answer. Braz finally looked up. The captain stood in the hatchway, rail pistol in hand, uniform scorched and torn. He looked like he'd walked through hell. He probably had. "I can get you 70% thrust," Braz said. "Maybe more. But I need the borders off my back." "You'll have it." Vance turned to leave. "Captain." Vance paused. "Whatever you're planning," Braz said, "make sure it's worth what we're paying." Vance didn't answer. He just walked back into the fire. On the bridge, Dren Halyard watched the tactical display and tried not to calculate odds. Odds were for people who had options. The VERATH carrier group had them boxed in. The jump gate they'd entered through was gone, collapsed by VERATH charges the moment the Iron Widow had passed through. Standard VERATH tactic. Trap your prey, then grind them down. Except the Iron Widow wasn't grinding. "Helm, status on intercept course," Halyard said. "Locked in, sir. Nearest destroyer is the VERATH ship designated Talon 6. Range closing. We'll be in lance distance in 4 minutes. Weapons. Plasma lance is at 60% charge. Point defense is mostly gone. Railguns are operational, but we're down to limited ammunition." Halyard nodded. He looked at the display again. The destroyer was twice their size. Fresh, undamaged. Its weapons were already tracking them. This was insane. But Vance had given the order. And in all the years Halyard had served under him, Vance had never given an order that didn't have a reason, even if that reason only made sense in retrospect. "All hands," Halyard said into the ship-wide channel. "Brace for combat maneuvers. This is going to get rough." The Iron Widow burned toward its prey. Sethic lost count of how many Warborn had fallen. That troubled him. The humans had retreated twice now, each time leaving behind traps. Explosive charges, collapsing bulkheads, venting atmosphere. Each time his forces had pushed through. Each time they had paid for every meter. This wasn't how prey behaved. "Speaker Kethvoran," Sethic broadcast to the carrier. "The humans are not breaking. They are delaying." The response came with a wash of contempt pheromones, even through the transmission. "They are vermin, Warborn Prime. They delay because they have no other option. Finish them." "Understood." Sethic cut the channel. The speaker was wrong. He could feel it. The humans weren't delaying out of desperation. They were delaying with purpose. But what purpose could a dying ship have? He ordered the final push. Every remaining Warborn, full assault. They would drown the humans in bodies if necessary. The last barricade was ahead. The humans waited behind it. Fewer now. Wounded. Exhausted. But still not afraid. Sethic gave the signal. His Warborn charged. Kassar saw them coming and knew this was the end. The barricade wouldn't hold. They were too few, too tired, too low on ammunition. The VERATH would wash over them like a tide. Then Captain Vance stepped up beside him. No orders. The captain just picked up a rifle from a fallen Marine, checked the magazine, and took position. "Sergeant," Vance said. "Sir." "When I say so, fall back to Junction 7 and seal it. And you? I'll be right behind you." Kassar didn't believe him, but he nodded anyway. The VERATH hit the barricade. Kassar fired. Vance fired. The Marines fired. Bodies piled up. VERATH and human alike. A blade caught Kassar across the ribs. He felt the pain distantly, kept shooting. Beside him, A Marine went down. Another. Vance was still standing, still firing, face blank. "Now!" Vance said. Kasser grabbed the nearest Marine and ran. Behind him he heard Vance's rifle go dry, heard the clatter of it being thrown, heard the distinctive crack of a rail pistol firing single shots. They reached Junction 7. Kasser turned. Vance was walking backward toward them, firing steadily. The VERATH were massing for a final charge. The captain stepped through the hatch. Kasser sealed it. "Bras," Vance said into his comm. "Now!" The ship lurched. Halyard watched the Iron Widow slam into the VERATH destroyer at point-blank range. The impact threw everyone on the bridge to the deck. Consoles exploded. The lights died, then flickered back to emergency red. "Fire lances!" Halyard shouted. "Fire everything!" The plasma lances discharged directly into the destroyer's hull. At this range, there was no missing. The beams punched through armor, through compartments, through the reactor shielding. The VERATH ship didn't explode. It came apart. The blast wave hit the Iron Widow like a hammer. Sections of the port side buckled. Atmosphere screamed out through a dozen new breaches. But the ship held. Barely. Somehow. "Damage report," Halyard managed. "Shields gone. Armor failing on multiple decks. Engines are holding at 70%. 70%. Bras had done it. The boarders? We're getting reports now. The explosion vented decks 4, 5, and 6. Most of the VERATH forces are gone. Sucked into space." Halyard closed his eyes. Opened them. "Get me the captain." Satik tumbled through the void. His assault pod had ejected automatically when the hull breached. Standard Warborn survival protocol. He was alive. Most of his clutch brothers were not. Through the pod's tiny viewport, he watched the human ship. It was burning, crippled, dying, and it was moving. Not toward the gate, not toward escape, toward the next VERATH vessel. The humans weren't fleeing. They were hunting. Satik activated his emergency beacon and waited for retrieval. He would tell Speaker Kethvorin what he had seen. He would warn them. He doubted the speaker would listen. Vance reached the bridge as Halyard was pulling himself back into his chair. "Status. Shields gone. Armor critical. But we're mobile." Halyard turned to face him. "The VERATH fleet is repositioning. They weren't expecting us to fight back. They'll adjust." "They will. What do we do when they do?" Vance looked at the tactical display. The MAW stretched out before them. Dying stars, unstable gates, asteroid fields, a graveyard waiting to happen. But graveyards could be useful. "Plot a course to the next jump gate," he said. "The one leading deeper into the MAW." Halyard frowned. "Deeper into the MAW, sir?" "We're not leaving." Vance's voice was flat. "Final. They trapped us in here. Fine. We'll make them regret it. Each gate we pass, we mine. Every wreck we leave behind, we rig to explode. And every system we touch, we bleed them." "Then this isn't about escape anymore." "No." Vance looked at his first officer. "It's a war." The Iron Widow turned away from the burning destroyer and moved deeper into the MAW. Behind it, the VERATH fleet scrambled to regroup. Ahead, more enemies waited. But the rules had changed. The prey had become the predator. The jump gate died in silence. From the bridge of the Iron Widow, Halyard watched the massive ring structure buckle and twist as the charges detonated. The VERATH ships on the other side, 3 destroyers and a light cruiser, fired uselessly at the collapsing gate, their weapons splashing against debris that moments ago had been their only path forward. "Gate down," the helm officer reported. "They're stranded." "For now," Halyard said. "They'll find another route. They always do." He turned to the tactical display. The MAW spread out before them in all its dying glory. A graveyard of ancient stars, fields of drifting rock, and the skeletal remains of jump gates that had failed centuries before humanity ever reached for the stars. In the past days, they had added to the graveyard, considerably. 2 gates mined and collapsed. 1 asteroid field seeded with rigged debris. Proximity fuses attached to chunks of rock the size of houses. A VERATH supply convoy ambushed in a dead system, gutted for everything useful. The hulls left drifting as warnings. The bleeding corridor. That's what Braz had started calling it. Halyard thought the name fit. The hatch behind him opened. Captain Vance walked onto the bridge, a data tablet in his hand. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He probably hadn't. "Status," Vance said. "Gate destroyed. Pursuit cut off for now. Engineering reports we're holding at 68% thrust." Halyard paused. "We're running low on everything else." "I know." Vance handed him the tablet. Halyard looked at it. Supply manifests, ammunition counts, medical inventory, power cell reserves. All of them trending toward 0. "We can stretch it another week," Halyard said. "Maybe 10 days if we ration hard." "Not good enough." "No, it isn't." Halyard handed the tablet back. Vance walked to the main display and pulled up a sector map. His finger traced a path through the MAW, stopping at a point near a dead star, a brown dwarf that had burned out long before Earth's sun was born. "The Throne of Silence," Vance said. "Currently stationed here, recovering damaged ships from our last engagement." "A carrier." Halyard kept his voice neutral. "Confirming target is the carrier, sir." "Yes, we're going to board a carrier." The bridge went quiet. Halyard could feel the crew listening, even as they pretended to focus on their stations. "Captain," Halyard said carefully, "for tactical clarity, we barely survived boarding a destroyer. A carrier has 10 times the internal security, 20 times the crew. We don't have the numbers. We don't need numbers. We need speed." Vance tapped the display, highlighting 2 points on the carrier's schematic. "Command deck, munitions bay, in and out, 15 minutes. "What's on the command deck?" "IFF transponder codes." Halyard understood immediately. IFF, identify friend or foe. The codes the VERATH use to recognize their own ships. With those codes, the Iron Widow could appear as a friendly vessel on VERATH sensors. Or worse, they could make VERATH ships appear as enemies to each other. And the munitions bay? Resupply. We take what we can carry. Rig the rest to blow. Vance turned to face him. We hit them where they don't expect it. We take what we need. We leave them burning. Halyard looked at the schematic. The carrier was massive, a mobile hive capable of deploying swarms of fighters and housing thousands of VERATH. Boarding it was suicide, but so was running out of ammunition in the middle of enemy territory. "When?" Halyard asked. 6 hours. Get the crew ready." The approach took 3 hours. The Iron Widow crept through the debris field surrounding the dead star, using the wrecks of VERATH ships, their own kills from days earlier, as cover. Running silent. Minimal power. Drifting like just another piece of wreckage in a system full of it. Kassar used the time to brief his team. They gathered in the cargo bay that had been converted to an armory. Marines in vacuum-rated assault armor. Breaching charges. Cutting tools. Close-quarters weapons for the tight corridors of a VERATH ship. 2 objectives, Kassar said, pointing at the holographic display of the carrier's interior. Team 1 hits the command deck. That's me. We secure the IFF codes and eliminate any command staff we find. Team 2 hits the munitions bay. Load up on everything we can carry. Ammunition, power cells, medical supplies if they have anything compatible. They won't, someone muttered. Then we take their ammunition and shove it down their throats. Kassar didn't smile. Questions? What's our extraction window? 15 minutes from breach. The Iron Widow will reposition for pickup. If you're not at the extraction point when the clock runs out, you're not coming home. No one argued. They all understood. One more thing, Kassar paused. The captain is coming with us. He'll be leading Team 2. That got a reaction. The Marines straightened instinctively, surprise passing through the room as they processed the captain's decision to join the assault. The hatch opened. Captain Vance walked in, already suited up. His armor was older than most of the Marines, scarred, patched, functional. He carried a rail pistol on his hip and a boarding shotgun across his back. "Sergeant," Vance said. "Captain, your team ready?" "Ready as they'll ever be." Vance nodded. He looked at the assembled Marines, didn't give a speech, didn't offer encouragement. He just checked his weapon, confirmed his seals, and moved to the airlock. The Marines followed. The breach was violent. The Iron Widow fired magnetic grapplers into the carrier's hull, pulling close enough for the boarding tubes to extend. The seals locked. The charges blew. And then they were inside. Kasser went first. The corridor on the other side was dark, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. The VERATH hadn't expected an assault. They were still scrambling. "Move," Kasser ordered. "Team 1, on me. Team 2, split left." They separated. Kasser's team pushed toward the command deck, following the route they'd memorized from captured schematics. Behind him, he heard Vance's team peeling off toward the munitions bay. The first VERATH they encountered were hollows, the expendable laborer caste, unarmed, panicked. Kasser's team cut through them without slowing. There was no honor in it, but there was no time for anything else. The Warborn came next. They boiled out of a side corridor, 4 of them, chitin armor gleaming, weapons already firing. A Marine to Kasser's left went down. Another took a round to the shoulder but kept moving. Kasser put 2 shots through the lead Warborn's skull and stepped over the body before it finished falling. "Keep moving, don't stop." They pushed through. Vance's team reached the munitions bay in under 4 minutes. The space was vast, a cathedral of destruction, racks of torpedoes, crates of ammunition, power cells stacked in columns that reached toward the ceiling, enough firepower to arm a small fleet. "Load up," Vance ordered. "Priority to ammunition and power cells, anything you can carry." The Marines moved fast, grabbing what they could, stuffing packs and drag bags with supplies. Vance moved deeper into the bay, scanning for something specific. He found it in the back corner, a munitions control station. From here, he could see the bay's entire inventory and its safety systems. He began rigging the charges. "Captain," one of the Marines appeared beside him. "We've got company." Vance looked up. Through the bay's main entrance, he could see movement. VERATH security forces massing, lots of them. "How long until we're loaded?" 3 minutes, maybe 4. "You have 2. Vance finished placing the charges and picked up his shotgun. He walked toward the entrance, positioning himself between his team and the incoming VERATH. The first wave came through fast. Vance fired. The shotgun's magnetic accelerator hurled a spread of tungsten pellets at close range. The lead VERATH came apart. The second one stumbled over the remains. Vance shot that one too. "Keep loading," he said calmly. "I'll hold here." Kasser's team reached the command deck. The doors were sealed, heavy blast doors designed to protect the ship's leadership from exactly this kind of assault. Kasser nodded to his breacher, who slapped a shaped charge against the seam. "Fire in the hole." The explosion tore the doors open. Kasser went through the smoke, rifle up. The command deck was circular, dominated by a central holographic display showing the carrier's status. VERATH officers scrambled for weapons. Warborn guards moved to intercept. Kasser shot the first guard in the throat. His team fanned out, engaging the others. The fighting was close and brutal, exactly what humans did best, and VERATH hated most. In the chaos, Kasser spotted his target. A speaker, identifiable by the ceremonial markings on his carapace, was hunched over a console, mandibles clicking frantically, trying to purge the IFF codes. Kasser pushed through the melee. A Warborn grabbed his arm. He broke its grip, drove his breaching axe into its skull, and kept moving. The speaker saw him coming, drew a blade. Too slow. Kasser's axe took the speaker's primary arm off at the joint. The alien screamed. a high, piercing sound that was only half audible to human ears. Kasser shoved him aside and looked at the console. The purge was at 80%. He slammed his palm against the emergency stop. The progress bar froze, then reversed. "Code secured," he broadcast. "Team 1, fall back to extraction." Behind him, the speaker was still alive, still screaming. Kasser considered finishing him, decided it wasn't worth the ammunition. He left the speaker to bleed, and ran. The fighting retreat was worse than the assault. The VERATH had adapted. Instead of meeting the humans head-on in the corridors, they were sealing bulkheads, rerouting the borders into kill zones, venting compartments ahead of their advance. Vance's team hit the first sealed bulkhead 2 minutes into their retreat. "Breach it," Vance ordered. "We're low on charges, Captain." "Then we go through the wall." They blew through an interior partition instead, creating their own path. The explosion showered them with debris and sucked atmosphere out of the corridor behind them. But it worked. They kept moving. Marines fell. A corporal took a blade to the gut and kept running until his blood pressure dropped too low to maintain consciousness. A private got separated when a bulkhead slammed shut, trapping him with a squad of Warborn. His screams lasted 4 seconds. Vance didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. The clock was running. Behind them, the munitions bay exploded. The carrier shuddered like a wounded animal. The blast wave knocked Vance off his feet. He rolled, came up, kept moving. Around him, his team did the same. Professional. Trained. Dying. But never stopping. "Kasser," Vance broadcast. "Status. 2 minutes from extraction. Heavy contact." "We're right behind you." The breach point was a war zone. Kasser's team had arrived first and was holding the corridor against waves of VERATH reinforcements. The boarding tube was still intact, but the Iron Widow was taking fire. Vance could feel the impacts through the carrier's hull. "Go!" Kasser shouted when he saw Vance's team approaching. "Get your people through." "You first, Sergeant." Like hell. They held the line together. Vance firing controlled bursts. Kasser swinging his axe when they got too close. Marines falling back through the boarding tube one by one, dragging supplies and wounded with them. The VERATH kept coming. The carrier's internal defenses were fully mobilized now, channeling everything toward the breach point. "Last man!" someone shouted. Vance grabbed Kasser's shoulder. "Move!" They ran. The boarding tube shook as weapons fire hammered the connection point. Vance heard the grapplers straining, the metal groaning. They burst through into the Iron Widow's cargo bay. Vance spun around. "Seal it. Now." The tube retracted. The airlock slammed shut. "Bridge," Vance said into his comm. "Get us out of here." The Iron Widow burned away from the dying carrier. The Throne of Silence didn't just die. It came apart. The munitions bay explosion had been the first wound, but the fire had spread to the torpedo storage, then the reactor shielding, then everything else. From the bridge of the Iron Widow, Halyard watched the carrier split in half, secondary explosions rippling along its length. Escape pods launched in swarms, but not enough. "Helm, get us to minimum safe distance," Halyard ordered. "And find me somewhere to hide while we lick our wounds." "Yes, sir." The hatch opened. Vance walked onto the bridge, still in his armor, blood on his hands. Not all of it alien. "Report," Vance said. "Carrier destroyed. We're clear." Halyard paused. "Casualties?" "Heavy. But we got what we came for." Halyard pulled up the data package Kasser's team had transmitted. The IFF codes, complete, intact. A skeleton key to the entire VERATH fleet. "What do we do with them?" Vance walked to the main display. The MAW stretched out before them. Systems they'd already bled. Systems they hadn't touched yet. And somewhere beyond, the main VERATH fleet. "We use them," Vance said. "We make the enemy see ghosts. We make allies shoot each other. We turn their own fleet into a weapon. That will bring them down on us with everything they have. That's the point." Vance turned to face him. "We've been bleeding them. Now we're going to gut them. Halyard looked at the tactical display, at the carrier's grave, at the systems full of traps and mines and rigged wrecks. The bleeding corridor, he said quietly. It's about to get a lot bloodier. Across the MAW, aboard his flagship, Speaker Admiral Kethvorin received the news of the Throne of Silence's destruction. He stood in his command chamber, surrounded by subordinate speakers and warborn advisors, and listened to the report. A single human ship, a boarding action, IFF code stolen, carrier destroyed. For the first time since the campaign began, Kethvorin felt something other than contempt. He felt doubt. The humans were not behaving like prey. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were fighting and winning. All fleets, Kethvorin commanded. Converge on the MAW, maximum speed. Find the human ship and destroy it. His subordinates acknowledged. The orders went out. Across 3 sectors, VERATH ships changed course, abandoning other operations, other targets, other priorities. Everything focused on one ship, one crew, one captain. Kethvorin watched the fleet movements on his display. Overwhelming force, no escape possible. And yet, somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered a warning. Something in him warned that this pursuit felt too clean, too expected, too much like a trap. Kethvorin silenced the voice. There was no trap that could stop the combined might of the Ascendancy. He forced himself to believe it. The VERATH nebula was a wound in space. Ionized gas stretched across 3 light hours, glowing a dull crimson from the dying star at its heart. Sensors couldn't penetrate it. Shields destabilized inside it. Ships that entered flew blind, deaf, and vulnerable. It was perfect. Captain Vance stood at the main display, watching the 3 VERATH fleets converge on the nebula from different vectors. Kethvorin's flagship led the largest group from the Galactic North. 2 smaller fleets approached from the east and west, reinforcements pulled from other campaigns, all focused on one objective: destroy the Iron Widow, end the bleeding corridor. They're accelerating, Halyard reported from his station. All 3 fleets. They'll reach the nebula's edge within the hour. Good. Captain, I need the full plan. Halyard turned to face him. We can't survive a fight with 3 fleets. We can barely survive another jump. We're not fighting 3 fleets. Vance tapped the display, bringing up the IFF codes they'd captured from the Throne of Silence. With these, they could make any ship appear as anything: friend, foe, or phantom. We're making them fight each other. He outlined the plan in short, clipped sentences. Plant false IFF signatures throughout the nebula. Make each fleet believe enemy vessels are already inside. When they enter, their sensors will show human ships everywhere. But those signatures will actually be coming from other VERATH vessels. The VERATH would see enemies. They would open fire. And in the chaos of a nebula that blinded sensors and scrambled communications, they wouldn't realize their mistake until it was far too late. That could work, Halyard said quietly. It's the only option we have left. The hatch opened. Braz walked onto the bridge, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was dirtier than his skin. Engines are holding, he said. I've got maybe 2 more hard burns in her before something critical gives out. After that, we're drifting. 2 burns is enough. Captain? Braz stopped beside the command chair. I've been keeping this ship alive with spit and prayers for 2 weeks. I can keep doing it. But she's dying. You need to know that. Vance looked at him, at Halyard, at the crew working their stations with the quiet focus of people who had accepted their odds and decided to keep working anyway. Understood, Vance said. Now get back to engineering and give me those 2 burns when I need them. Braz nodded and left. Vance turned back to the display. The fleets were still converging. The nebula waited, red and silent. Begin broadcasting the false signatures, Vance ordered. "Scatter them throughout the nebula. Make it look like we've got a whole fleet hiding in there." "And us?" "We go dark. Drift to the nebula's edge. Watch." The Iron Widow's active systems powered down one by one. The ship went cold, running on minimal power, invisible against the backdrop of the nebula's glow. The trap was set. Now they waited. Speaker Admiral Kethvorin stood in the command chamber of his flagship, the Ascendant Will, and watched his fleet enter the nebula. The crimson gas swallowed his ships like a living thing. Sensors degraded immediately, visual range dropped to nothing, electromagnetic readings became unreliable, even pheromone-based communication between nearby vessels grew difficult. This was not how VERATH preferred to fight. They liked clean engagements, clear fields of fire, overwhelming numerical superiority applied with precision. But the humans had forced his hand. Every day the Iron Widow remained operational was an insult to the Ascendancy. So he had come with 3 fleets, enough firepower to crack a planet, enough ships to search every cubic meter of the MAW. The humans would die here. He would make certain of it. "Contact," one of his sensor operators reported. "Multiple signatures. Bearing northwest, inside the nebula." Kethvorin leaned forward. "Identification?" IFF reads as human vessels. Multiple contacts. They're holding position. So, the prey had chosen to make a stand. Admirable, in a crude sort of way. "All ships, advance and engage. Destroy them." His fleet pushed deeper into the crimson fog, weapons charged. Targeting systems struggled against the interference, but locked onto the signatures ahead. They opened fire. The Eastern Fleet entered the nebula 17 minutes later. Fleet Commander Vethsaros had received Kethvorin's orders to converge and destroy. He had complied without question. The Speaker Admiral's authority was absolute. But as his ships penetrated the nebula's outer layers, his sensor officers reported something unexpected. "Contact. Multiple signatures. Bearing west." "Identification?" IFF reads as... The officer hesitated. "Human vessels." Vethsaros clicked his mandibles in confusion. The humans were supposed to be to the north, where Kethvorin was engaging them. Why would they be here, unless there were more of them than anyone had realized? "All ships, engage." His fleet opened fire on the signatures to the west. The signatures that were, in fact, ships from the Western Fleet. The Western Fleet arrived last, and entered the nebula to find chaos already erupting. Weapons fire from multiple directions. IFF signatures scattered everywhere, all reading as human vessels. Explosions blooming in the crimson fog. The fleet commander didn't hesitate. His orders were clear. Destroy the humans. He opened fire on everything. From the edge of the nebula, the Iron Widow watched the VERATH tear themselves apart. The display showed it in abstract. Sensor ghosts, energy signatures, the brief flares of ships dying. But Vance didn't need detailed imagery to know what was happening. 3 fleets, each convinced they were fighting humans, were slaughtering each other in the fog. "It's working," Halyard said. There was no triumph in his voice, just exhaustion. Vance watched the chaos unfold. Ships collided. Torpedoes found friendly targets. Carriers launched fighters that couldn't tell friend from foe. The nebula became a kill box, and the VERATH had walked into it willingly. But it wouldn't last forever. Eventually, someone would realize the truth. Someone would restore communications, override the false IFF codes, pull the survivors out of the maelstrom. "There," Vance said, pointing at the display. A single ship was breaking free of the engagement. A large vessel, moving with purpose toward the nebula's edge. The Ascendant Will. Kethvorin's flagship. Damaged, but alive. Retreating. "Where's he going?" Halyard checked the navigation data. "The Thorngate Fortress. It's an orbital station guarding the last jump gate out of the MAW. If he reaches it, he can call for reinforcements. More fleets. Fresh ships. Then we stop him. Captain, that fortress has more firepower than everything we've faced combined. What's the approach? Vance looked at the display, at the fortress's position, at the Iron Widow's current status, engines failing, armor gone, weapons depleted. We're not going to fight it, he said. We're going to ram it. The bridge went silent. Full acceleration, everything bros can give us. We hit the fortress at point 4C, directly into the command section. Impact survival probability is near 0. I know. Vance turned to face his first officer. But if Kethvorin escapes, this starts over. New fleets, new campaigns. Everything we've done, everyone we've lost, it means nothing. But if we take out that fortress, we trap what's left of his fleet in the MAW. No reinforcements, no escape. They die here. Bridge crew survival remains unlikely. Maybe. Vance's voice didn't waver. Maybe not. We'll evacuate non-essential crew before impact. Escape pods. Anyone who wants to leave, leaves. But someone has to stay at the helm. Someone has to make sure we hit the target. Halyard was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. You're not staying alone. Dren, I'm your first officer. My place is on this bridge. Halyard straightened. Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually get into an escape pod at the last second. You have a habit of forgetting to save yourself. Despite everything, Vance almost smiled. Kasser will want to stay, Halyard continued. And Braz won't leave his engines. We'll have a skeleton crew, enough to get the job done. Vance nodded slowly. Then, let's get it done. He activated the ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency evacuation. Non-essential personnel to escape pods. Launch on my mark. He paused. It's been an honor serving with you. Vance out. He closed the channel and turned to the helm. Plot an intercept course for Thorngate Fortress. Maximum acceleration. Course plotted, sir. Execute. The Iron Widow burned toward its final target. Kethvorin reached the Thorngate Fortress with his flagship barely holding together. The battle in the Nebula had been a catastrophe. His fleet, 3 fleets, had torn each other apart like animals. By the time he'd realized the truth, by the time he'd understood that the IFF codes had been corrupted, it was already too late. The humans had done this. 1 ship, 1 crew. They had turned the might of the Ascendancy against itself. It was impossible. It was obscene. It violated every principle of warfare that the VERATH held sacred. And now, as Kethvorin's flagship limped into the fortress's protective shadow, he saw something on the sensors that made his blood run cold. The human ship was coming directly toward the fortress, not fleeing, not hiding, coming straight at them, accelerating hard. "What are they doing?" one of his officers asked. Kethvorin watched the human ship grow larger on the display. Its course was unwavering. Its speed was increasing. Point 2C, point 3, point 4. They weren't attacking. They were aiming. All batteries, Kethvorin ordered. Concentrate fire on that ship. Destroy it before... The fortress opened fire. Hundreds of weapons tracking the Iron Widow, pouring destruction into its path. The human ship shuddered. Pieces broke away. Atmosphere vented. It didn't stop. It didn't slow down. Kethvorin watched the human ship fill the viewport, watched it grow from a distant spark to a burning lance pointed directly at his heart. In the final second, he understood. The humans didn't fight for honor. They didn't fight for glory. They didn't fight to win. They fought to end things. The Iron Widow struck Thorngate Fortress at point 4C. The impact was beyond description. The fortress's command section, where Kethvorin stood, where his staff worked, where the jump gate controls were housed, simply ceased to exist. The energy released by the collision tore through the station like a shockwave through water, shattering decks, rupturing reactors, killing everything in its path. When it was over, the fortress was a ruin. The jump gate it guarded was debris. and Speaker Admiral Kethvorin was dust. The escape pods tumbled through space, knocked off course by the shockwave. Inside one of them, Halyard regained consciousness slowly. Everything hurt. His ears were ringing. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. He checked the pod's systems. Life support functional. Beacon active. Several other pods nearby, their signals visible on the tiny display. He'd done it. At the last moment, he'd overridden Vance's command lockout and triggered the captain's emergency ejection. Vance was too important to die in that impact. Too many battles still depended on him. Too many people still followed him. Halyard had made the choice the moment the captain gave the order. He would rather face the captain's anger than let the war lose the one man still holding it together. Vance had been furious. Halyard had heard him shouting over the comm in the seconds before impact. But he'd gotten him out. Once the collision course was locked, Halyard had waited until the final countdown before triggering both emergency ejections, leaving the Iron Widow to complete the run on autopilot. The question was whether Vance had survived the ejection, the shockwave, the chaos. Halyard activated his comm. "This is First Officer Halyard. Any survivors, respond." Static. Then, one by one, voices. "Kasser here. Pod 7. Injured but functional. Bros, Pod 12. Someone tell me my ship didn't just die for nothing." And then, after a long pause, a voice that made Halyard close his fists in relief. "Halyard!" Vance's voice. Cold, controlled, alive. "You ejected my pod." "Yes, sir. We're going to discuss that." "Looking forward to it, sir." Silence. Then, "Thank you." The Terran rescue ship arrived 6 hours later. It had been en route before the battle even started. Part of the larger operation Vance had committed them to from the moment they entered the MAW. The bleeding corridor had never been a desperate last stand. It had always been a diversion. While the Iron Widow had drawn every available VERATH fleet into the MAW, while Kethvorin had focused his entire attention on destroying one ship, Terran forces had launched offensives on 4 other fronts. Colony worlds liberated. Supply lines cut. Strategic positions seized. The Ascendancy wasn't just wounded. It was fracturing. The rescue ship's captain briefed them as they were brought aboard. Halyard listened in a daze. Kasser sat in a corner, his wounds being treated by a medic. Braz argued with the ship's engineer about the quality of their reactor shielding. And Vance sat alone in the cargo bay, staring at nothing. A medic approached him eventually, young, nervous. Probably had never seen a captain who looked like he'd crawled out of a war. "Sir, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" Vance didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the viewport, on the MAW still glowing with the light of dying ships and ruined stations. "No," he said, "just resting." The medic nodded and moved on to the next survivor. He closed his eyes, took one breath, then another. The bleeding corridor was over. The cost had been paid. And somewhere in the silence that followed, Ezra Vance was already preparing for the next war, because the only way to protect the peace was to be ready to break it.